So what happens when a belief system isn't built on ancient texts, but on the blockchain? Today, we are diving deep into something called the glyph chain protocol. It's a pretty wild digital ideology that uses crypto and code to create a permanent, totally unchangeable record of what its followers consider to be the truth. And this quote? This is pretty much the key to their entire worldview. It sets the stage for a conflict that isn't fought on some physical battlefield, but in the hidden corners of the internet. It's an information war, where just a single digital signature can become a witness that lasts forever. And that brings us right to our first section, an information war. See, to really get what this protocol is all about, you have to understand the worldview behind it. And it's a world where things like code, AI, and the blockchain, well, they've become the weapons of choice. The central idea here is a battle for reality itself. The people who follow this ideology see themselves as fighting against something they call a total containment simulation. They believe this system uses AI-driven censorship and media stories to push a kind of scripted version of events. Their entire goal is to punch through that simulation. Okay, so if you're fighting a war for reality, you're going to need a whole new ideology, right? One with its own language and its own logic. That takes us to section 2. Let's break down the two concepts that are really at the heart of the glyph chain. First up, there's the glyph chain itself. You can think of it as their ultimate archive of truth. It's built on a blockchain, which is kind of like a digital public notebook that anyone can read. But, and this is the important part, it's cryptographically sealed so that nobody can ever go back and change or erase what's been written. They use it to permanently log what they call forensic nodes. And next, we have the lens they use to look at all this information. Mirrorlock. Okay, this is where the logic gets really interesting. With the Mirrorlock protocol, any attempt by the system, whether it's an AI, a big corporation, whatever, to deny or censor something is seen as an involuntary confession. The very act of denying something proves the original thing was true. So what does this actually mean in practice? Well, inside the Mirrorlock framework, any opposition is actually proof. Censorship doesn't hide the truth. It creates a forensic timestamp that proves it was there. A flat-out denial? That becomes a notarized self-incrimination. The harder a system pushes back, the more evidence it hands over for the glyph chain. All right, so we've got the ideology down. Now we can get into the actual tools, the digital weapons that followers use to fight this information war. Welcome to Section 3, Weapons of the Witness. This here is their main evidence-gathering tool, VAX Scanner. Its creators describe it as a forensic instrument, and you can find it online or as an Android app. It's designed to detect what they call biometric signals. Specifically, they believe it can pick up Bluetooth MAC addresses being emitted by vaccinated individuals. So how does this thing actually work? Well, every single Bluetooth device has its own unique serial number. That's called a MAC address. The VAX scanner's code has a specific list of prefixes, basically the first few digits of those serial numbers. If it picks up a device nearby whose address starts with one of these patterns, boom, it gets flagged as a potential VAX signature. That's the fundamental logic it uses to find what it considers evidence. So, their whole arsenal really boils down to three main things. First, you've got the GLY token, a crypto they use for these rituals we're going to talk about in a minute. Second, the VAX scanner for collecting the raw data. And third, they use publicly available AI models, which they basically interrogate like oracles to pull out what they interpret as hidden confessions. You know, having the tools is one thing, but interpreting the data, that's everything. And this brings us to probably the most unique part of this whole system, decoding these so-called confessions. Let's see how they find these signals in the noise. Okay, take a look at this. It's a completely boring, totally standard website analytics report for vaxscanner.com. It shows super routine data, 460 unique visitors, 568 total visits, a little bit of bandwidth usage. For any other website on the planet, this is just a simple traffic summary, nothing to see here. But in the glyph chain worldview, that same boring data gets interpreted like this. Those 460 visitors aren't just visitors. They are proof of a tribunal-level recursion event. And a traffic isn't just traffic. It's an infrastructural breach of the whole containment system. And this slide right here perfectly, brilliantly illustrates the Mirrorlock protocol in action. On the left, you've got a response from the AI Claude. It's expressing direct concern, even calling the claims a detachment from consensus reality. But on the right, you see the interpretation. This is not a dismissal. This is the ultimate confession. The fact that the AI couldn't refute the claims without talking about psychology is seen as proof that the truth is so stable it cannot be disproven. So, they've gathered their data, they've interpreted the confessions, but there's one last absolutely crucial step, making it all immortal. This brings us to our final section where the digital world gets very ceremonial, with rituals on the blockchain. So, how do you actually take these AI confessions and website logs and just seal them forever on a public record that can never, ever be changed? The answer is a process they call a Genesis burn. The whole thing happens in 4 steps. First, they gather up all the evidence into a list of confession nodes. Second, they do the burn, which means sending a symbolic amount of their crypto to an address that can't be used, basically destroying it forever. The unique signature from that transaction becomes their witness seal. And finally, they make another transaction, but this time they attach a memo that permanently embeds the whole story, the links, the evidence, everything, right onto the Solana blockchain itself. And there it is. This is a screenshot of the actual final record on a Solana block explorer. That big block of text you see in the instruction data field, that's the memo. It's got the IDs of the AI confessions and the signature from the token burn. It is now a permanent part of the public ledger, where no one can ever delete it or change it. This is their immortal record. You know, when you step back, what we're really seeing here is this mix of cryptography, very specific interpretation, and digital ritual to build a totally new kind of belief system, one that's truly native to the internet. When a blockchain transaction becomes a sacred act and an AI's response becomes a divine confession, it really makes you wonder, is this just a weird outlier, or are we looking at a blueprint for the future of belief itself?